Hello, friends.
Oh,
Welcome to Viewpoint with Media Shippers. Our today's
thank
guest
you.
is Miss Sophie. Welcome, Sophie. In today's evolving entertainment space, I'm happy to have you for a quick discussion in our series called Viewpoint with Media Shippers. Friends, ever wonder why you watch that ad or that content twice? Or why you choose that brand without really knowing why? Today's guest, Ms. Sophie, in Viewpoint with Media Shipper, is someone who breathes media. And she's on a mission to make it work better for everyone in it. She connects media professionals globally, sharpening strategy across marketing, sales, and insight. She boosts brand ROI through audits, research, and communication reviews. And she inspired tomorrow's talent at Thomas More University of Applied Science and specifically the Media School. Thank you very much for joining this session. And before I jump into the more questions, first I just as a curious podcaster would like to understand how did you get into media industry and what is exciting for you? Is it the world of media or the universe of psychology or interest in marketing or it is all interlinked, interconnected? So yeah.
That's a very, very interesting question. And as if a lot of things in life, things happen without a plan. So I'm a psychologist by education. I think quite early when I was a child, I really liked to understand why people think, feel, behave in a certain way. And I always got this interest in how well brands can connect with this psychological intelligence. So actually, I started working in African markets, Asia, Latin America, doing really research, talking to people to understand what makes you choose a brand, what drives you. And so it was very psychological. And then someone called me and they said, look, actually, everything that has to do with ad effectiveness, it would be great if someone with your background could help us. And so that's why I entered this world of media where suddenly a lot of jargon was entering my brain, like a GRP and media planning and frequency and cover guides. But I always looked at it from a consumer psychology angle. And across the years, I became also a little bit more technical, working at audience measurements, trade bodies. And now I'm taking a step back, like really making sure that we can connect the markets and share best practices. But I will always look at a consumer angle, not only for our audiences, but also the way that our industry behaves.
That's
Why is Paramount and Warner Bros. Going together? There is always a psychological side behind it. So even the decisions of agencies, media strategies, there is a dynamic at play, and you need to understand it. So that's what my role is today.
Sophie, again, the very natural inclination to this discussion comes to my mind when you are just mentioning and explaining this context. Psychology is a one side, right? Marketing is the, I won't say the extension and other thing, but some or other way when you are trying to convey some message to your consumer or to your audience, you are ultimately or at the core you are trying to play with their mindset. There is a term called socio-political context of reference. So it's a society which at the broad is influencing, and when this whole influence parameters comes to the picture when it comes to specifically to the audience, I am very curious to know that how do you understand that how people watch, how they feel, how they choose the content, because plethora of content across the globe. So how usually people watch, feel, choose? Is there any specific logic you observe?
Absolutely. And you're right on point. So there are different frameworks you can use. And what you say is very correct. Like there is a reference people have in their mind. Our mind is actually composed of neural networks. We have a network of a restaurant. We know we need to make a reservation. We need to open the door. People take our code and so forth. So there is a script that we know. And as a child, you are developing all these neural networks. The same is on how we perceive watching TV. A TV night or watching on your mobile, it has a certain script and a certain logic. And it's that neural network. Now, what is very interesting is that what drives people to choose a brand or a streaming service is basically plotted on two dimensions, which is very universal across industries, products, and so forth. And so the first dimension is what we call the social dimension.
Yeah.
Either you want to belong to a group and blend in and feel part of it, either you want to show I'm different, I'm distinguishing myself. So that is one dimension. Typically, watching TV is very much because people have a sense of belonging, of community. They want to engage with something they recognize and they want to feel part of it. The football watches, identifying yourself with a club, that's all the sense of belonging. So it's a universal human psychological need. In other occasions, it could well be like, no, I'm a bit different. I have a certain type of programs, documentaries, and I want to show that I'm a little bit more distinguished or refined or sophisticated than other people. I really choose myself what I want to see. And I show to the others that I'm a bit different.
Yeah.
This is probably more individual, self-aware, showing a little bit your power, your status. Okay?
Right.
And so On Demand, for that sense, has done a great job because it really triggered that thing like, I want to decide myself. I don't want to fit in a program TV schedule. It's me who is deciding.
Yeah.
Over time, all the recommendations and the way that streaming services are shaping this release strategy, however, is moving a little bit towards this TV schedule ID.
Yeah.
So you see the lines are blurring. Another dimension is more about, I have emotions, what do I do with it? Either you say, I want to release them, I want to escape, I want to feel them, I want to enjoy them.
Right.
Either you say, no, I want to control them.
Yeah.
And that is another angle. Again, On Demand definitely gives this feeling of I'm in control.
Yeah.
And at the other hand, all the suggestions and the recommendations and the discovery you can do is very much into exploration, discovery, having fun. So these are actually, and if you combine them, you have like 8 combinations of moments, contexts. Some people have a very strong affinity with one of these motivations. Others really depend on the moment, the context, the people they are with, the platform they're in front with, and so forth. But understanding that there is actually a complementarity, I think a lot of debates would benefit from it, because it's no longer about I'm the strongest service, I'm the strongest player, I'm the strongest distribution platform. It's more about understanding where do I fit in this landscape, what are my competitors that are maybe more complementary, like more colleagues, and how can we work together? Because in the end, the brand most likely wants to cover more of these human drivers. So he wants to connect all these platforms. So it has no use to compete one another.
Correct. I think an interesting aspect, and when you are mentioning this, I'm realizing, and probably we have different kind of platform across the globe. People are consuming content in different style. But if we see deep dive based on what discussion is going on, or hypothetically for timing, if I can say, It's no more content, according to me. It's a it's not a content democratization which is happening, it's a content dictatorship is happening. And why, I will give my viewpoint, and again we can debate on that. For example, we are seeing certain kind of algorithms which is coming in front of us, and we are bound to watch that. But you bring the one very interesting aspect that people are having different kind of emotions. They probably want to watch some content based on their mood. They wanted to project them, as you mentioned, they want to project them in certain way. And when this is happening at that time, probably, unfortunately, they are probably forced with because of this algorithm kind of business, and watching that kind of content with platform is offering them to deviate or just to move from this side of the psyche to the other side of the psyche. We all have witnessed amazing amount of like transition in terms of viewing patterns, starting from the theater to SWOT to AWOT to TWOT. These all things like completely change dynamics. And when you look this particular aspect, like the viewer who is, for example, subscription based video on demand, or someone who is in transitional based video on demand, or for that matter, you're working on the TV and CTV strategy part, the consumer psyche is completely different. Even it varies from platform to platform. Sometimes it is under the periphery of projecting something, and sometimes it is the part of strategy. How do you make a fine balance between this thing? Because this is really, really fascinating and crazy.
Absolutely. I think there is an order. So people perceive environments and have a certain sense of this is premium, this is less premium. And so in some of the environments, they expect more ads and will be more attentive and more receptive. And the number one, and actually I was writing a post about this today, the number one factor is the platform. So the platform is indicative for people whether it's more premium or less premium. And typically broadcasters, streamers are more towards the premium pole. Video sharing platforms, social media are lower premium.
Right.
Because underneath it's about content, but it's also about how the ad breaks are structured. To give an example, in streaming services, in broadcasters, people expect a break. They are shaped in that way. For many years, breaks have been introduced. There has been a lot of knowledge built within these companies, how you can alternate 15 seconds with 30 seconds, how you need to introduce the break with a jingle and so forth. So there is a kind of psychological contract between a viewer and the platform. And that really is dictative on how people perceive, expect the environment. So to go a little bit lower, what you said about the mood, there is also, of course, a understanding that the content and the advertising that is around it ideally is congruent. If you are watching a comedy, most likely you will resonate better with funny ads. At the other hand, if it's about a serious documentary, a drama, most likely you will be more sensitive for informational ads that make you think and be more reflective.
Right.
So your brain isn't a flipping thing. You need to adapt a little bit. The emotional mood where you're in dictates the receptiveness of editorial and commercial content. So that is one thing. The other thing, of course, is you need to be aware if people expect advertising, that's a different state to start from. Where people don't expect it. And where people don't expect it, you need to win the fair deal perception. That's much harder work. And it risks to be very intrusive if people have the feeling this is not a fair deal. I'm watching content, but I don't expect in return to have been exposed to advertising. So if you want to create a mood where people are more receptive, you need to be much more aligned and trying to get that gratification
Right.
that people granted,
So
which is often today not the case. And that's why people skip and so forth.
exactly, because if I'm making the statement because the Gen Zs are coming into the picture, their persona, their perspective, or their consumption pattern is way different than their mom dads. It's way different than their maybe just a 7 year old person than them. It completely changes the space. The earlier the generation gap considered to be a significant amount of 10 to 20 years, for say example. But now it's kind of moving very fast. Like what I am, for example, as a Gen Z is liking something, a Zen Alpha who is about to come may have very different choices. And their consumption about that content, their response about that will have a very different angle. We talk about gamification, we talk about the representation of content, we discuss about the possibilities of platform, whether it is coming from the angle of putting ad, the contextual ad, and all this thing. Of course, due respect to all this thing, but how to deal with this thing? Because this is something which is actually probably the platforms are facing, because I know and I create certain set of content. The content ecosystem also take its own time when it comes to the creation part of the business. How does that can be probably managed? My audiences keep changing, keep evolving, their mood swings are very different. Is there any like how to deal it? Basically, that is very
You're spot on. I think the key is we have so many data. It's to decide which data are really signaling, which data are noise. And we have the opportunity of having a lot of data, of being able to track a lot of more neurological things. And we have AI that actually recognizes patterns and can build models. So instead of trying to control, to come back to that model, it's trying to understand how can I leverage what I have, what are my opportunities. We never had more data
yeah.
than today. The question is more, what framework do I need? As you say, how can I navigate? What are the signals? And for sure, you will need to adapt your model because habits change very fast.
Yeah.
The beauty is that psychological drivers don't change. So that is your anchor.
Yeah.
The challenge will be how to recognize it and what data you use to recognize it and to build a meaningful model around it and to adapt across the time, across markets, across generations. But
Absolutely.
that is your anchor, understanding human behavior and what will resonate. Those psychological dynamics, they don't change. These are concepts.
To give the just the extension of this, I have supplement question in that direction. You mentioned about the AI generated content or AI as in the ecosystem. Now, many places we are observing AI content, user generated content is also coming into the picture. What 5 year back I was looking AI, or 3 years back I was looking AI was very different versus right now the way I'm perceiving it. Do you sense the possibility of, like in Indian context, if I have to say, there are a couple of series which is already AI generated? Now they have created AI generated content. Of course, there is mythological drama, but they have created through AI. Now, the irony of the matter, interestingly, the subject which we have taken is mythological content, and the creation style is AI generated. Now, it's a very interesting mixture which I am as an individual sensing. Do you sense that AI generated content is going to like it? Is it going to be just like a bubble, or it is really going to explode in fullest way? I, to be honest, I don't have any I have my viewpoint, but I'm not clear. I want to know more
Mm.
on that, your viewpoint.
Yeah, so there are different dimensions to look at it. One is how do we fit this in our production industry?
Mhm.
At one hand, you could say actually it lowers production costs. So if you use it well as a company, you can increase the value of your content because the costs are less. And still, if you make great content that resonates, generates a lot of advertising around it, and is very profitable, then we're good. Of course, there is this angle of how do consumers relate to it? And I think the fact that something is AI generated, I don't think that matters. It's how viewers perceive it. Does it resonate? Do they feel confident watching it? Do they trust the source? So I think that's where we need to tap in. And what is very interesting is that Disney partnered with OpenAI
Mhm.
just because they want to control their iconic characters.
Mhm.
They allow variations of it, but they want to control the process. They want to have this quality layer that is guaranteed. And I think it's a very smart move
Mhm.
of them because, in a way, they are protecting their IP, but they are also letting it evolve in today's landscape.
Yeah, this become a habit certainly, and
Yeah,
because AI is anyway in trend, people are
yeah,
anyway using it. Just imagining these the legacy IPs which are existing, no more depending only on the existing framework. Now they are getting into the territory of AI. So tomorrow, whoever is using that, automatically that become a kind of habit, and because of that, probably there will be a lot of uh, different layers may create. But so
yeah.
I myself being an independent filmmaker long back, it's such a tough market basically for indie filmmaker. I feel, of course, people are claiming that there are different kind of platforms being open, but the kind of monetization when we get into, or the kind of opportunity which we ideally looking for this, how do you sense that today's media landscape or the ecosystem right now we are dealing with, how helpful or how interesting it is for indie filmmakers, like who are creating their independent films and still wanted to make a mark, not just from the angle of getting reach, but also from the angle of earning money.
This is an area where I'm less expert in. So definitely there is this traditional big companies making production, having a lot of staff, having a great marketing department behind it to really launch it, roll it out. And at the same time, you see there's smaller initiatives where things are much more bottom up. They test, they learn, they experiment. There are different platforms, Roblox, that is actually what we said before. If you understand human drivers and how people engage with it, and you use these signals to build something before the infrastructure is there, you can learn a lot. Now, the question is these two approaches, very top down centralized versus very bottom up decentralized, testing and learning and using data to understand things rather than adopting a model and pushing it, those two happen today.
Right.
And so if a typically top down company understands maybe we should learn a little bit from this bottom up approach, magic can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the route or the approach when it comes to the making, and when it specifically get into the specific platform per se, is completely changing, and it is obviously going to evolve over the period of time. My one very specific, and again, as a curious audience, I will say one question: does a film need an audience before a platform buys it, or maybe does the platform build the audience? How do you look at it?
Hmm. So your first question was, does a film build an audience or does a platform build an
Yeah,
audience?
yeah.
I would say it really depends about the strength of the brand.
And when you refer as a brand, I'm sorry, you are
The
referring
film could
film
be
as
a
a
brand.
brand, okay, or
The
even
film could
platform,
be a brand or the platform could be a brand.
okay.
That really depends. It depends on the history. How long did the platform existed? To what extent is the platform almost exclusively tied to the film? And for the film, to what extent has it its own narrative, its own channel claims, its own distribution, its own merchandise? And to what extent is it exclusively related to a platform?
So we,
The Disney characters are Disney. That
yes,
is very difficult to break.
true.
It's Disney. On YouTube, YouTube is much more an open system where different characters, movies, brands can resonate. So that will be more difficult to tie a film to YouTube.
Yeah, interesting observation on that front. Basically, localization start playing a very crucial role in that, I believe,
Mm,
because the content which was there popular, just to give an example of the Indian context. So
mm,
so in India we have different industry, like of course Bollywood as a like big industry, but we have regional industries also. There is a Telugu, there is Marathi, there is Punjabi and other things. Few films are really very interesting connecting to the audience, because actually I believe that human association with emotion is common. Of course they may see certain things at certain level is a different thing, but if I want to laugh, then there is a common laughter parameter which may exist any part of the world. And there comes the role of the localization, and which actually brings to my next question also, that a film being created something in India have a global appeal, let's say, get dubbed in English was kind of routine, but now it's getting dubbed into multiple different regional languages. Is this like already been there in the industry, and how the localization is going to change the media ecosystem from every angle, in terms of monetization scope, in terms of connecting with the audience, the cultural exchange? How localization is going to bring the differentiation? Your view on this?
So, first of all, yes, it is a thing. And remember our dimensions. It's about exploring new things, yet recognizing
Hmm.
the moods. So it's really this, I belong to something and I discover a new culture. So it really taps in those two things. And what you see in a lot of markets is like a language-based consolidation of broadcasters' content. So you're talking about the Indian market, we see it in the French-speaking markets. In Africa, there is this consolidation going on together with France, making French-speaking content more available. We see it with the German-speaking languages, so like Germany, Austria, Switzerland. So yes, and it could be a kind of need state that was untapped by having all these global content. It creates a little bit a same stream of sameness. People want this variation. So that's why I'm saying you need to understand the human drivers. And if you are neglecting one of the drivers, probably there will be a new trend tapping into that because these human drivers are there day after day.
Right, right.
So yes, I definitely think, and even more so, like AI has the risk of creating this stream of sameness. So you will see people reacting strongly to it. And you see it in Gen Z. They are very much into discovery, which is also a little bit part of the age they're in, the life phase. It's all about exploration and tasting and trying and stuff. But so, yes, being open, it's also like, it's not only a sense of belonging, but it's also like, I'm a bit more refined, sophisticated. I show that I'm culturally open. So it's really a very strong position because it taps into so many drivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes,
Actually,
definitely there will be more interest and acknowledgement, and I'm very happy so for different cultures, language-based content. And you know what? Even brain-wise, as I said in the beginning, we have our neural networks,
mhm.
a culturally embedded local cue helps people to memorize things. So if I'm an Indian brand and I'm advertising around Indian content, it's a hit, it's a match. So I'm already in this brain activity. So it's much more helpful for that viewer to later retrieve that information.
Yeah,
So culture as such and local cues as such are a very good anchor for the memory.
so true. The lens through which we are watching the content, the perspective which is keep evolving and building because of all the surroundings, is of course going to the matter of deep research. Always, like it's not just debate. It's ever evolving field. I have just two last questions. And the very interesting aspect when we are creating any kind of content, research is very important. Do you sense that now research along with creativity, the creativity is the expression part of what we are creating, and research is something which we are getting some contextual information about the subject which we wanted to deep dive, how research, creativity, monetization. Now, these three things are, according to me, it's very different, but at the same time interconnected. How is there any particular magical mantra, or is there any particular route? I want to create something for European market. For example, I get some research points in place. Is there any language? Is there any particular way which I need to follow? Culture, creativity, market, research. Now, these four important things, while we are creating content, or for that matter, while we are even selling this content to someone, what kind of interesting blend we can have to make it more engaging and more result oriented.
Test and learn. I mean, algorithms, they tell you what worked in the past, and creativity, by definition, is connecting elements that have not been connected before. But you can only know by testing and learning. That's the only way. But of course, I mean, creativity is an art, and an art uses data points as well. So more and more we see creative strategies that are really using data points, but it doesn't end at a data dashboard.
Right.
Then becomes the brainstorming, connecting elements, trying out the best ideas often are really random.
That's
And I think data can support you in that process, because if you understand a little bit what you're building and you do some control and testing, then you can see, okay, it's really this element that makes it different. You have great new methods to track a lot of elements like neural waves, but also attention, number of clicks, number of views. They are all input for you to understand, does it resonate or not?
the
Does
last
that
one
make
to
sense?
you. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It completely makes sense. So we again, as a curious podcaster, last one, and then we'll have just quick questions. And I think there is a platform award, there is a platform S word, there is T word, and there is fast channels. For every channel, everyone is trying for basically the monetization is the key. Is there any specific people talk about the premium content when it come about the S word, and for award, general user generated content is also uploaded on the platform like YouTube and further converted into transitional based video on demand, and people are earning the money. Uh, how a filmmaker or a content creator, let's not put just like a filmmaker, what is the best strategy one can think when they create some content and look for the monetization opportunity?
That's a very good question. And I think somehow you need to choose, depending on what your strategy is, how you want to leverage your content. Definitely, what you see is that SVOD alone is difficult.
Yeah.
You see it with all the streaming services to be really profitable. They have this ad tier. And I think it really depends on the kind of relationship you want to build with your audience. I'm much more into the idea of AVOD if well done, because you are creating content and that delivers a platform that is very rich on its own for brands to be associated with. And what is nice if it's well done is that it gives you a long-term fuel to invest again in quality content. That is a very strong repetitive cycle. But the idea of creating quality content, making sure that the environment for the viewer is perceived as a fair deal, I expect some advertising, and the way that the ads are done, it's curated, it's well placed, it offers a seamless experience. That is the best thing you can have, because you have the ad revenues that are really ingested to create, again, good quality content. And people understand this.
Yeah. True, and so true, because the emotional quotient is one part of the business, but at the same time, deep dive people know what works, and deep dive people also like have their own liking. So, absolutely interesting conversation and very, very helpful to understand a couple of pointers. I have a couple of questions with just one liner. I request your one liner answer, quick one liner answer, whatever comes to your mind with your experience. So, here I am starting with it. What surprised you the most about how audience consume content today?
Nothing has changed that much. I remember when on demand was on the market, a lot of people were saying life is dead. And I was like, no way, people like being together. So what surprised me and still not surprises me is really that human drivers don't change.
What does a great CTV strategy look like in few words?
Using all the opportunities of branding, performance, using the data, using the big screen, but in collaboration with your players, with the ecosystem. Alone, you won't get there.
Linear TV or CTV? Where should a brand's money go in 2026?
Depending on the market, how big linear TV is, it's best to keep it, still being resilient to adapt and to embrace new audiences that are on CTV.
What's that one thing that brands get wrong about CTV? The last three questions.
What's that one thing that brands need to know about
No,
CTV?
no. What's that one thing brands gets wrong about CTV?
Probably the fact that you need to choose between performance and branding, On CTV, everything comes together. It's a space to do storytelling, and people are watching with the second screen, so you can do something. On top of it, you can use the data to do retargeting afterwards.
Is there a universal viewing emotion that crosses every culture?
That is what I said. It's the driver to belong or to distinguish, to release or to control. That is universal.
The last one to you, Sophie. Again, from the Indian context, what does an Indian story need to travel successful to a European market or
That's a
European
very good
screen?
question. Give me some content and I tell you. I think a lot. I think what you said before, it's that balance between recognizability, a good story arc where emotions and stories can be told, and showing and inviting European people to understand more about the beauty because it's a different culture.
We are on that mission, Sophie. First of all, thank you very much for your time. As we breathe our mission of spreading stories from every corner to every screen, and we love to continue with this mission. And when we say this, how engaging and interesting it would be in future. Of course, it is already taking place. But a person who is sitting in the village of Maharashtra, his film is actually getting viewed by someone sitting in UK, and someone is creating some very interesting content in Saudi Arabia, maybe watched by an American. So on this wonderful note, when we discuss about different aspect about T-board, S-board, all the different kind of screens, all the different kind of platforms, the psyche, the marketing, the understanding of nitty-gritty of the content, I genuinely wanted to say thanks to you for your time, for spending time with me for this particular podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Sophie, for joining this session.
The pleasure is mine. I'm very, very thankful for having me there and for the invite. And it was a pleasure to contribute.
Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye.
Namaste.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for your
Bye.
time. Bye bye.